Hi, how's it going? This is Antoine Walsh. This is my uh, benchmark test modification presentation for Tesla 5311. Um, I chose a reading comprehension question for advanced sixth graders, um, in which it's pretty much um, it's a there's a passage about like the history of string instruments and how it led to the development of the piano, which is a string instrument. But it's just different. You don't like pluck strings. It evolved into like a system of like tapping strings. Um, and throughout um, the passage, pianos are compared with various instruments like like harps and this and that. And then the question is, uh, which topic within the passage allows for the comparison and contrast of, um, I'm sorry, the like what's being compared and contrasted? Is it the pianos or the instruments? And the so the really the passage is about pianos, but the instruments are what are being compared and contrasted. So um, yeah, the objective is to use a compare and contrast organizational pattern to answer a multiple choice question, and of course it's testing your reading comprehension to a certain degree, although that's maybe not the main objective. But yeah, and this is a norm referenced criterion, so of course it's a standardized test, so it's a norm referenced, and 54% of sixth graders got the correct response. Okay, so getting into my criticisms, um, I couldn't really come up with much to say that this the test was invalid. Really, the only thing I will say is it's a multiple choice test, and multiple choice tests can never be entirely valid. I mean, for example, there's like the guess factor, where if you're kind of stuck between two answers and you just might be like kind of rushed, and you might wind up guessing even though you might actually know the right answer. Like there's just that pressure to guess, and there's that, and then although that might be more of a reliability issue. So it's confusing, but another thing I could say is that the multiple choice, it's just a limited testing style, and like compare that to open-ended questions. That with an open-ended question, you can really like demonstrate your ability to you can demonstrate your understanding of comparing and contrasting. Where if you're doing a multiple choice, you're just all you're saying is like, oh, like that's it. Like this is the comparing and contrasting. But it's limited how much you're able to show, how much of your knowledge of comparing and contrasting you're actually able to show. So I mean, you could be um, like a genius kid who should be in like 12th grade classes, but you wouldn't know from that multiple choice question because it's limited. So yeah, in terms of reliability, I would say that standardized multiple choice tests are generally considered to be pretty reliable. Um, you can make a case that there's the testing anxiety and other psychological factors that come along with those kind of tests. But I mean, we all know when we're feeling a little nervous, that's going to affect your performance, and so that has an effect on reliability. But that being said, the more I think about it, I mean, you could probably make some kind of argument for any test that it's not reliable in some way. So I feel like I'm it's kind of splitting hairs by making that statement, because yeah, again, like pretty much any test you could probably come up with something that could make it unreliable. So, um, okay, the authenticity. Um, yeah, I'm gonna go back because I actually found this to be like exceptionally authentic. Just in the writing style, it's not too like uh, it's not too literary. Like it's not like newspaper writing style. It's kind of so almost sort of like friendly. And you see here at the end, they end by saying like, "Oh, you don't have to be a maestro to enjoy the sound of this instrument. The next time you see one, why don't you sit down and pick out a tune?" And it's written in kind of like an authentic. The use of English is kind of like realistic and authentic, I think. But that being said, um, again, like it's just multiple choice questions. Um, do does that like apply to the real world? Not so much, and compared to open-ended questions, if you were to say describe why the instruments are being compared and contrasted and the piano isn't or something like that, then you would be practicing a skill that you need. Like you're explaining something, but it's just not in real life. You don't encounter so many situations where someone is like, "What is being contrasted here? This, or this?" So again, it's just the multiple choice question format isn't authentic in terms of its like in how it applies to the real world. Um, so my biggest criticism for this kind of uh, task is the washback because obviously like a norm referenced criterion style standardized test isn't going to give you any feedback other than like your score and it's like in terms of this task if 24% of the students they answered pianos instead of instruments, but all they're going to find out is that they got the wrong answer there. If they even find that out, they might just find out like their overall score, but they're not going to find out. They're not going to get any feedback saying like, oh, you see, like pianos is the topic of the passage overall, but what's being compared and contrasted is the instruments. At no point do they get that feedback. So I would say that that kind of multiple choice reading comprehension task for a standardized test does not give any good washback to the test taker. And practicality, I mean, it doesn't really get more practical than standardized tests. That's why they have them, I think, right? Just that they have to have a test that every student can take and can be like easily graded. They can literally be graded by computers. So it's probably a standardized test like that is like the epitome of practicality, I guess you could say. So getting into my modifications here for the level 1, the entering level student, that was kind of eye-opening for me actually, because it kind of made me wish I had chosen a younger grade. But then you think about it, I mean, I've never had to deal with like a newcomer and be in this situation, but yeah, like imagine if you have students, you're teaching like 6th grade reading comprehension, and then like an immigrant family moves, and all of a sudden you have a student with this level of English, and you have to give them like the same questions. Like what would you do? So you have to use pictures. You have to use pictures and visual cues, and that's what I did. For the more unfamiliar vocabulary, I guess, I put a number next to it which would correspond to like a key with definitions and pictures. But more importantly, I mean, I had to completely like reword the passage. If you go back, it's about 6 short paragraphs, and here, I pretty much shortened it down to like 5 or 6 simple sentences, pretty much changing the whole thing. But I still, in this simplified version, it's instruments are being compared, even in this like really simple English, even in this like simple passage. The instruments, it's like about pianos, but the instruments are what's being compared. So that's I'm still testing the same thing in the most like simple way possible for an early learner of a language. And then I had to change the question to make it comprehensible. Yeah, I'm not using words for the answers. Again, I use pictures. So I guess for the correct answer would be like a picture of different stringed instruments on a balance scale. That was like the best I could come up with. I'm going to be honest, I'm not like entirely confident on this modification, but it's like I said, it's kind of eye-opening for me to imagine, what would you do if you're a 6th grade teacher and all of a sudden you have a newcomer come into the class, and how do you modify something for someone who might not even like know the alphabet? So yeah, for the level 3 developing proficiency level, that was a little bit easier. It's just simplifying the English, and here's an example. This is the original text. Long ago, people used bows and arrows. They noticed that plucking a string on the bow made the string vibrate. The back and forth motion produced a sound. They found that different sounds could be made by changing the string's thickness, length, and tightness. So you can simplify that to: long ago, people realized bows make sounds. They realized they can make different sounds by changing the string's thickness, length, and tightness. And generally that would be like the kind of scaffolding I would do for modification for that proficiency level. I changed the question to from down to this to: what do the topics in this writing compare? Is it the piano or is it the instruments? And finally, the bridging stage. So I looked that up, and it's at that level, the student should be able to interpret grade level literature and get the significance of the data and everything. So I reread the passage, and I figured I wouldn't really change much except for this idiom, because I know that for even advanced second language speakers, idioms can be confusing, and if it's not a bad idea to exclude them when you can. So I took out the pave the way for the piano and just changed it to many different instruments, led to the creation of the piano. Okay, so that's it for anyone who listened to me until the end. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for listening.